Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to talk about public speaking, and it's a pretty nerve-wracking kind of thing, right? I gave a speech the other day in one of my classes, and it's always been a nerve-wracking kind of thing, I always feel those nerves, and I've spoken quite a few times in front of people, not just at school, but for other events, and um, I wouldn't say it's gotten any easier for me, but I've learned how to become better at speaking, right? And I've seen the results. In this last speech I gave for my class, we had a section at the end of the speeches that several students gave where the rest of the class had a chance to critique their fellow students' speeches that went up and spoke, and the good and the bad, right? And I got some good feedback, and people really liked my speech. And so I was thinking today for this video topic, I thought, what are some things that I used, some techniques I employed in my speech that seemed to yield these good results? So I wrote down a few here. The first tip I would say, which I think is really important, is to simply slow down when you're speaking, right? That's something I have to work on with these videos sometimes, especially with my older videos. The videos I was first, 10, 15 or so, something like that. I'm speaking a lot faster, which makes it a lot harder for people to understand what you're saying. But maybe this seems more obvious. Maybe this will be the most obvious of the couple tips I'm going to give you guys for effective public speaking. But it really helps to slow down when you're talking, especially in large groups of people, because you want everyone to clearly understand your message. So when you slow down, everyone knows what you're saying, and no one has to, no one's confused. There's no chance for people to be confused and get lost and stray from your message, right? Because once people are confused and they don't know what you're talking about, then before you know it, no one's really paying attention, right? So you want people to understand what you're saying. Slow talking takes time. I would recommend trying to become conscious of how fast you're going. If you find yourself frequently stumbling over your words, you got these hiccups and you're tripping over your words, right? I would recommend you to become more conscious of not just what you're saying, but the rate at which you're saying things, the rate of your speech. And I think a really good way to do this, and I actually picked this up from one of my professors from last semester, because I noticed this was something he did in class until he addressed it one day. One of my professors last semester said that since he knows he's always been a more fast talker, and that led to some confusion sometimes, whether it was on like one-on-one interpersonal settings or it was for speeches. And in either situation, he said when he found himself talking super fast and getting really excited, he would use his hands and count out the syllables of his words. And it's not incredibly obvious and it's not very distracting, but you can kind of notice when he does it. And he says he does it for himself. So he count every single syllable using his hand gestures as he's talking. And it makes him conscious of his rate of speech and reminds him, hey, you should pull back, you should slow down a little. So I'd recommend doing that. When you're giving a speech to people, next time you do, use your hands and kind of count out. It doesn't have to be super obvious, you don't have to be waving your hands all over the place during your speech, right? Because that'll be obnoxious and pretty distracting, but slightly, and you can incorporate it as natural hand gestures, right? I don't think anyone will really be able to tell. So try that. I think it will help slow down your speech. Second tip I have is to talk to individual people in the crowd, right? Now, like I said earlier, public speaking is a nerve-wracking thing, right? It's people's one of their greatest fears. What I'd recommend, instead of trying to talk to the entire crowd, because that's the reason why people are so nervous to give speeches, it's because they're afraid of judgment of others. So forget about that. Forget about the crowd of people and focus on individual members of the audience, right? So when you transition to the next topic in your speech, right, your next point, pick one person in the crowd and focus on them for just do 5 seconds, okay? So for 5 seconds, no matter what, look that person in the eyes and talk only to them. Because you know how to have a conversation, right? You can have a conversation with one person. You've been doing it for years. So just have a conversation with one person. Do it for 5 seconds, like I said, and then move on to the next person, right? So talk to this person for 5 seconds, look them in the eyes, and then talk to the next person. Do it for 5 seconds, talk to the next person. It has a profound effect on many different levels for many different reasons, right? And one thing it does is it really captivates your audience, both on an individual level and on a collective level. Because for the individual level, when you're talking to people, it makes them feel like they're important to you, right? Because I think that sometimes when we're listening to someone, a speaker, they're usually a pretty credible person, and it can kind of feel like the person who's giving a speech knows more than everyone else, is more educated than everyone else, maybe is more popular, more powerful, more well-known, more likable than everyone else in the crowd. Even if that's not true, it can kind of feel that way because you're the one on the stage, you're the one with the microphone at the podium. Kind of feels like you're on a bit of a pedestal, right? But when you talk to individual people, it makes you feel like, it makes everyone in the audience feel like you're one of them, and you become more relatable. And what I believe to be true is the signs and signals you get from one person, individual person in a crowd, reflects the entire crowd, right? And what I noticed on Thursday when I talked to individual people is their eyes kind of widened a little bit, right? Not crazy like this, and that's kind of scary. But what I mean is, like, I talked to individual people, and I cared about what I was talking about, and so did they. I talked to them, and they kind of became fixated on every word I was saying, right? They didn't look away. When you're looking at people and you're talking to them, they're like, nodding the whole time. And it was so cool to experience that. Now, the hard thing with this, and it's kind of hard to explain it, but I'll try my best, is that, and this goes for speeches or for conversation, what I find at least, maybe you find it too, is that when you're talking to people and you're, trying to make an eye contact while you're talking, you kind of sometimes find yourself forgetting what you want to say and losing your train of thought. So that's something you're going to have to contend with, but that's why I recommend only 5 seconds, no more than 5 seconds, and then move on to the next person, right? And not all the time. Sometimes you can look at your PowerPoint, your slides, you refer to your notes, but I'd recommend looking at people, and talking to individual people in the crowd instead of making yourself so nervous by trying to talk to, a packed house, a packed room full of people, right? Third tip, my last tip, is going to be being okay with being nervous, right? Maybe that sounds like kind of a cliche, kind of sounds like on the same vein as just be yourself, but I'll break it down a bit. So I've improved at public speaking because I've been practicing a lot, and like most things, if you want to get better, you have to practice. I've been doing it seriously for about maybe 2.5 years now. Most of the time it's in school settings, not always, but practice makes perfect. And despite that, I've been practicing a lot, but every single time, just like on Thursday when I gave my speech, I was nervous. Like all day you kind of feel that anxiety in your chest a bit because it's coming up later. And then when you're sitting in the classroom or you're at work or wherever and your name's about to be called, and then when it's called, you get super nervous, right? Like your heart starts racing like crazy, you start shaking, maybe you get like a rash. I know some people, or like your face gets red. My face will get red sometimes when I'm giving speeches. And what I told myself, because I realized that in the past I'd try all these different techniques to make the nervousness, the nerves, the anxiety go away. Like I'd try deep breathing techniques, breathing in through my nose and out through my mouth, with my eyes closed, and finding, going all zen, finding my inner peace, or trying to visualize and think about other things, right? All these different techniques to try and get the nerves to go away. But without fail, every single time when my name's called up and it's time for me to go up to the podium, the nerves come back. And I've given enough speeches to realize that I definitely don't think that those nerves are ever going to go away, but it doesn't matter, right? So for this speech on Thursday, what I did is I told myself, I'm going to be nervous, right? Like no matter what, I'm going to be nervous. So I accepted it. And I think that's a stoic way of thinking, right? I've talked about stoicism in one of my previous videos. I think it's a stoic way of thinking, For things that are out of your control, like with these anxious feelings, I feel like we can't really control them. So I feel for things that we can't control, we might as well accept them, right? Because there's no point in getting upset over them. And I get upset sometimes and like, man, I've been practicing public speaking for a few years now, and I thought I was improving, and I still get nervous. And I use that as a sign that I'm not improving at all. And it's not true, because I have been improving. So I told myself, I'm going to get nervous no matter what. I might as well forget about it. And what happened was, after the first few minutes of speaking, I wasn't nervous anymore, because I wasn't thinking about being nervous, right? But as soon as you start thinking about being nervous, you get that loop, that cycle. And every time you think about being nervous, you just get more and more nervous. So I would recommend just forget about it, right? I think it's a natural thing. And I think for even the most well-practiced, confident public speakers in the world, right? And you probably can think of some people now. For even the most confident, well-spoken people in the world, when they get up on that stage or get in front of the podium, they still get those butterflies. They still get nervous. I don't think that's going to go away because, it's a big fear for people. Public speaking is one of our greatest fears. Most people are more afraid to give a speech in front of a crowd than dying. Seriously. More people are afraid of public speaking than death. But I would say forget about it. Don't worry about the nerves, right? And they're going to be there. You're going to be nervous, but it's fine. Just forget about it. So those are the 3 tips. I would say slow down, become conscious of how fast you're talking and slow down. Talk to individual people in the crowd and be okay with being nervous and accept it as a part of life, right? That some things are going to make you nervous. Just forget about it. So I think, and there are a lot of things, maybe I'll talk about this in another video, a lot of ways you can unpack this and expand upon what I talked about. And I think I will in the future give some tips, but these are 3 main things that have been helping me, and hopefully it'll help you guys too, right? So try these 3 things. Slowing down, talking to individual people, and accepting the nerves, right? And I think it'll help you guys a lot, okay? Catch you guys in the next video.